All right. This one from Vic JG. In light of the Austin Rivers tweet, Logan, I'm sure you at least got wind of this. This was the
basketball
NBA
thing?
NFL discussion a couple weeks ago. Which Commanders players, past or present, do you think could not just play but dominate in the NBA? The answer is none of them. None of them could dominate in the NBA. Play in the NBA is a different story. Like the first thing, like this was the most predictable cycle of a silly sports argument, because first you had a bunch of football players getting really, really mad and saying like, oh, you never, you couldn't go over the middle, whatever. And it's like, no. All the dudes that we're talking about here are playing wide receiver. But also when you flip it back the other way, like in order to play in the NBA, you basically need to be at least 6'3" and less than 230 pounds. And the number of dudes in the NFL that are greater than 6'3" and less than 230 pounds is pretty slim. And then you need to have extremely high skill level, especially if you're shorter than like 6'7", 6'8", which eliminates almost everybody. Because either like the tall dudes are O linemen or receivers, and the receivers, like, unless they're awesome basketball players, and still then, like if you're 6'4", 220, you're a monster NFL receiver. You're an undersized
like
NBA 2 guard.
Yeah, you're like a point guard. Yeah,
like it's just a height thing.
Yeah, so that's a really that's an interesting question. So I think, obviously Jordan Reed was a tremendous basketball player. Like he could get out there and his handles were awesome, and it felt like watching him that he could have played like college basketball somewhere. But I think
he probably could have. Yeah, I'm not saying the answer is zero. Dominate in the NBA, the answer is zero. Play in the NBA, if they had dedicated the training to it. Jay Reed feels like a great call. I mean, the guy that, I don't know if you know this, Trent Williams is an unbelievable basketball player.
That was what I was going to say, man. Like if there's one athlete that I think could do it, it's Trent. And because again, Trent would have to dedicate a lot of time to skill acquisition, all that kind of stuff. But if there was an athlete, like I just don't think people understand like how special he was as a mover, as a jumper, as a sprinter. Like his hand-eye coordination was incredible. Like he could easily dunk a basketball when he was 330 pounds. So I think about him
So I did a whole piece on like basically the mythology of Trent Williams' athleticism. When I was on the beat, I went around the locker room and collected stories. And Adrian Peterson was there at the time. They were together at Oklahoma, and he had a bunch, including like they were playing freshman pickup basketball, like when they first got to Oklahoma. And Trent's like out there just hanging out. He's like still in his sweats. And from standing underneath the rim, not like run up, apparently he's standing underneath the rim and did like a 360 in between the legs dunk.
Yeah, I saw him do that in slides we had a walkthrough at Lifetime Fitness, and he was in slides and just walked up and like straight like yammed it from under the basket, like off a vertical. Like he was a incredibly special athlete. And I just think about his size and ability to move. Like one of the craziest things like I've seen, like so Trent weighed like 325 when this happened, but interception, he like tracks down the DB, is able to sink his hips and like uncoil on this guy like in a way that looked like a linebacker, so again, from an athlete perspective, like he's probably one of the only ones. Again, Jordan Reed's one that because he was so skilled and he just kind of had this natural
and he played a lot of basketball.
And he
credits that crossover, move that he had to the basketball footwork that he had developed.
Yeah. So again, like those are the two guys that come to mind. But I think I think people don't understand like how specialized the NBA is now. You know what I mean? Like I saw a statistic recently. I'm going to butcher it, so just bear with me. But like, it's like something like less than 0.01% of people in the world are over 7 feet tall. But in the NBA, it's over 15%. You know what I mean? Like they've just accrued all these really like unusual body types for the sport. And there's a reason that, like people don't talk about this enough in terms of youth athletic development, but there's a reason that like people become football players and there's a reason people become basketball players. Like I had a scholarship offer to play soccer, right? And I was 6'4", 215. But like where am I going to make more money as a gigantic soccer player or like football player? Like probably football player. So like that road diverges in the woods and it just kind of naturally selects like the tough kind of stockier guys go play football, and the tall, lanky guys that are really, have great hand-eye coordination go play basketball. And like, that's just how it goes.
If you were going to be a great soccer player and make a lot of money, you would have known by the time you were 15 years old.
Right.
My
I could have played in college, like, and that would have been cool, like great college player, whatever. But
my guy Gucci was also 6'4", and he was in U.S. national team camps by 100%. The age of 14, and wound up playing in a couple World Cups. Like in that sport, early because they tell you.
Yeah,
and I think not that D1's anything to sneeze at. Like, that's incredible. But
you can develop late, all that kind of stuff, but it's just different, right? It's just like, and again, like if I look at my skill set as a player, like I was a hyper physical soccer player. You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously my path was to a more physical sport, right? And I think like when you look at guys that play football at the highest level, there's like a little bit of a screw loose, right? They're a little bit messed up. They're hyper physical. They love contact. And that's not basketball. And not saying basketball is not a physical sport that's crazy challenging. It's just different. And I think
basketball is a contact sport. Football is a collision sport.
Right, exactly. And I think it just naturally selects out. So, there's a reason there's not a bunch of 7 foot tall offensive linemen, because those dudes go play basketball, because that's where the money is for 7 foot tall dudes.
Right. All right. This question from @NoFollower says, Logan, what's the funniest thing an opponent said to you during or after a play that made you bust out and repeat it in the huddle?
So a lot of stuff I can't say on this podcast, right?
I'm sure.
Because it's inappropriate for our listeners.
I'm sure.
But a couple things, I just laughed at one of the things that a teammate said to me that I thought was hilarious. But I can't say it here. But yeah, most of the time, like it's, I can't even answer these questions because they're so inappropriate. I can't talk about it. But basically, a lot of them have to do with, stereotypes about being a white football player, right? And those comments tend to reflect that, and they're really funny. There's stories from college that I still crack up about of dudes, saying things like that. But yeah, nothing that I wish I could share them. But none of them are appropriate.
I'm gonna try to lead you in some places that we've gone before that maybe newer listeners, because like you had some run-ins with like Von Miller. I feel like a Michael Strahan run-in early in your career. You definitely had some DeMarcus Ware run-ins.
Yeah,
some of those were like play things versus
most of those are play things. Because again, anything anybody says to you, it's not overly positive. You know what I'm saying? Like, at least for me, it was like, hey, you're this big unathletic dude. Like, what are you doing here? One of the ones that I still crack up to this day was who's the corner that used to play for the Jacksonville Jaguars? They played for LA for a while. He played Jalen Ramsey, right? So it was like the 4th preseason game, and I was wearing this like rookie out, just wearing him out, and I threw him into the bench. And I was just like, and I kind of was laughing to myself. And Jalen Ramsey was standing there, and he's eating his sunflower seeds, or he's eating a hot dog or something. He's got his helmet on his side. He's like, look at you feeling all tough, being in the league 8 years and throwing a rookie into the bench. And I just started busting out laughing because it's true. It's like, what am I doing in this game? Why am I playing? And it was just such a crazy juxtaposition. And I think it's a perfect microcosm of the NFL, because it's like, here he is, like making millions and millions of dollars, eating seeds, and just kind of like, what the hell? Like, why are you playing so hard? And it's like, here is me. Like, I'm trying to make this freaking team, like, chill out, bro. Like, this is how I'm going to do it, And it just was this crazy, and it was really funny. Good for him, so.
There you go. We got a good one.
Got one in, but all the other ones are inappropriate.
The other ones, if we ever do an uncensored podcast that's not actually recorded, perhaps we can tell some of those stories.
Yeah, because I can't even say, I can't say any of them, so.
No. All right, this one from Big John 1906. Logan, more satisfying, a TD grab or a full speed collision where you hear the air leaving another man's body? And then he has a question for me too, which I can answer in a second. But TD or just knocking somebody, or perhaps throwing a rookie into the bench?
Yeah, I mean, it's always fun, like physically imposing your will on another person. But some of those big collisions, man, they're awesome. Like, I love them. They're great, but they hurt so bad. You know what I mean? Like, even though you're coming out on top, the other guy's on the ground, like, you've given a little bit of your soul to the football gods. You know what I'm saying?
Which is maybe satisfying if you do it every once in a while, but with the frequency that you had to because of who you were as a player, like, That's too many pieces of your soul that you left in on the field.
Yeah, I've told this story before about the guy from, the Colts, again,
Yeah.
like just going battering ram for the whole game. We got dented face mask, the whole thing. Like, I remember that game extremely fondly. Like, it's one of my proudest moments as a player. But I also know that, like, a little bit of my life is on that Colts field someplace. You know what I'm saying? Like, a couple brain cells, a couple of compressed discs and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, it's there. And, like, that's the sacrifice of those big hits. And those are awesome. And it's fun. It's fun, like, when you fall on top of a guy and you hear him go, ugh, like, all those things are great. But there's something very, like, and again, like, I love that. And that's probably what I enjoy most. But there's something awesome. Like, when I caught the touchdown against the Seattle Seahawks to go up 14-0 in that playoff game in 2012, and the stadium is just electric, and it's so loud. It feels like you're kind of being, like, electrocuted. Your whole body's alive. Like, there's nothing quite like that. So I think they're both pretty fantastic in their own right. It just kind of depends on the mood you're in on the day. You know what I mean? So, I like them both. But that touchdown in the playoff game, again, I know we lost that game, but we were up 14-0, and that was the one that got us the 14. That's pretty tough to beat in terms of emotional high from a sporting event.
Yeah, no, that tracks. The question he had for me, this is such an easy answer. Craig, if you never had to talk about one thing in the Commander sphere again, what would it be? So easy.
What is it?
The name. It's the name.
Oh, really? I thought you were going to say
and
Dan, maybe, like that whole, like,
no,
old regime.
because, like, I mean, in a way they're tied, but, like, it's just, I think it's the name because it's so polarizing. There are people that have extraordinarily strong opinions, and those opinions are kind of based in, like, an identity level thing, because for a lot of people, it is a proxy war for their politics. And not to, like, we're fun and light, and now I'm going serious.
Now
but,
we're
like,
getting crazy over here.
But, like, the reason is because people have such strong feelings, and thus they also think that, like, if you disagree with them, that you're, like, a terrible person. And that's people on both sides, the pro bringing the old name back, anti bringing, like, I'm not making a judgment here because, again, I don't want to talk about this ever again. But there's also the reality that the name is never coming back. And so thus it's not even worth having the argument because it's not going to change. And so if I could just, and like, this is very fresh for me because last week there were a couple of stories that came out involving the name, the old logo with Dan in the t-shirt. And then this senator from Montana who's holding things up on Capitol Hill from the RFK site. And, like, I tried to talk about those things in a fairly, like, high level way where I wasn't really touching on the core argument of that. But if you, like, it is so third rail that if you even remotely talk about anything related to that, whoosh, there goes the comment section. There goes the Twitter replies. There goes everything. And people just feel so strongly. And I get it. Like, I even get people that I get it on every level. Like, I intellectually understand why it's happening, but I don't enjoy it one bit. I could talk about Dan. We can talk about Dan right now. Did you see the story that happened yesterday with him in the movie?
Oh, I know. I don't. I'm not.
Yeah, there's a movie about the former president that's being made that he donated a lot of money to, or he helped fund, not donated. He helped fund because he thought it would be a fond portrayal, and then it turns out it's not a fond portrayal. And when he saw the movie at the Cannes Film Festival, he got really upset. And I'm like, okay, no matter, again, what you think of, like, how that, how he should be portrayed, whatever, the fact that Dan Snyder didn't do his homework and just gave people money, and then, like, it's just chef's kiss. Perfect. I have no notes other than that is hilarious. All right. Last but not least, our guy Teresh says, Logan, when you first put on the pads as a pro for rookie camp, did you notice a difference from coaches in treatment / expectations based off draft status, or does that immediately go out the window? And then he asked me, what is the best answer you've ever gotten to a routine post-game question?
Oh, love that question.
I do too. I got to try to think of an answer. I've been trying to rack my brain, but I'll think more while you answer.
So basically, absolutely. Absolutely, there's a difference in terms of how they treat you. I know a lot of coaches say, "Oh, we don't care about whether you're drafted, undrafted." It's just hard, man. Because, like, think about, like, with the drafted prospects, you've probably, as a coach, there you get a list. you watch them, you've interviewed them, you've had conversations with them, you know them better, you have a vision, you've established a vision for how you're going to use this player. And for the undrafted guy, it's like, yeah, we want you here, but like there's no financial investment, there's no draft capital investment. It's like, here you go, let's see if you can make the team. And I think they obviously pour more of their coaching time into the to the drafted guys or the priority free agents or whoever it is. And it just comes down to like money and then personal relationships. And it's nobody's fault. Like it's just how the cookie crumbles. And, the longer I was in the league, the more I understood that, right? Like the more like the first day of training camp or the first day of OTAs and you see, here are the drafted guys, here are the undrafted guys. Like they just are different. It's just a different pool. And it just is so hard to get from the undrafted pool into kind of like the cool kid crew. Like I remember when I was a rookie, just as a simple example, you remember they have like those metal lockers in the locker room, right? For the 90-man roster. And those are all like undrafted guys that are in there, right? Like, so if you're drafted, like Trent had a normal locker, Perry Riley had a normal locker. Like I was and so it's a visual difference. And again, that's totally fair because one's the 5th pick overall and one's a 3rd round draft pick. So I get it. I'm not saying I should have
one they're expected to have long term and use that locker. The other, they're expected to, once they move those lockers, it's because you're not there anymore.
Correct. Exactly right. And so that's just a simple kind of like, hey, like, when I was in Chicago, they used to put the undrafted free agents in a different locker room just to give you some talk about like, I don't care who you are. Like the coach is going to treat you a little different. So absolutely, 100%. And again, it's just part of the business and part of the dollars and cents of the NFL.
Yeah. On my question, what's the best answer you've ever gotten to a routine post-game question? I know that I've gotten really good answers at like press conferences and stuff that were like emotional based or tell a great story or whatever. I just can't think of them right now. The one that came to mind that was just cool was Steven Sims Jr., the former receiver here and kick returner. And it's a cool story because my guy Clinton Yates from ESPN, who's one of my best friends, texted me watching the game because Steven fumbled, I want to say it was a kickoff, like muffed it, picked it up, and then brought it to the house, which is something that Deion Sanders had done. And so I asked, or Clinton was like, yo, he just pulled a Deion. And like I went and found the clip and all that kind of stuff. And then I asked Steven Sims about that after the game. And I was basically like, did you know that was like a thing that Deion has done before? And he's like, yeah, that's the first thing I thought of because Deion was like my hero growing up.
Really?
And so that was definitely cool to like, see a guy who modeled his return game after Deion, which why wouldn't you? He's one of the best to ever do it. And have that very specific, like muff the kick, bring it to the house moment. And for me, it was cool because, one of my best friends, like who also is in the business, like kind of brought it to my attention as a thing. And so to connect all those dots was cool. So that's the answer that comes to mind. I know I've probably gotten some. I wonder that Teresh is almost a co-producer of the pod sometimes because he has all this amazing like information that he tweets out. He's the one who like connects all the dots. Be like, this guy was this guy's uncle who also blah 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 blah. Right. So Teresh, if you got this far and you're listening, you tell me what the answer is because you have such a ridiculous memory that I'm sure you remember some answer that someone gave to a question that I asked at some point in the last 8 years of being here in DC. But yeah, that's one of the ones that comes to mind. Great questions today. This was really fun. We will definitely do another mailbag, a couple more mailbags, honestly, probably between now and training camp. We will have an OTA review for you later this week. This practice is open as we record this tomorrow. And then we are also going to talk to you. If you remember all the pictures in the video of the guys having logs and carrying them around last week, that was just part of a team building exercise. We're going to talk to the people that put that on later this week and probably have that for you early next week as well. So make sure you're subscribed, and we appreciate you listening to Take Command. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command, which has a brand new home.
That's right. You can watch on YouTube at the Team 980.
You can also listen to full episodes in the free Odyssey app, which is now enabled with Apple CarPlay. So we'll just, follow you around.